Right now, another set of headlines for Christie to forget. As his aides try to fight key subpoenas in court, reports Christie ordered the Port Authority to inflate possible toll increases so he could swoop in and play the hero. And then inside the Astorino campaign, 1 week into his bid to unseat Andrew Cuomo, we'll get a status check from the Republicans' campaign spokeswoman. And later, we've never seen a president do this before. President Obama goes online between two ferns with comic Zach Galifianakis to sell healthcare.gov. So how'd he do? And at what point does a sales pitch reach the level of being unpresidential? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in again for Richard French, and thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening, March the 11th. Well, another day, another headache, or three, it seems, for New Jersey Governor Christie. Former Christie aides Bridget Kelly and Bill Stepien arguing in a Trenton courtroom today they should not have to comply with subpoenas issued by the legislative committees investigating Bridgegate and other scandals. Their lawyers say doing so would risk self-incrimination. Lawyers for the committee also question Kelly's use of personal email when writing about the bridge backups.
These are not personal emails. They may be off personal email accounts, but they deal with the topic of the lane closures. The fact that, as seemed to be routine, people in the office of the governor, including Ms. Kelly, immediately take their communications off of the office of the governor emails and put them into personal emails is in fact exactly why we should be able to obtain these types of documents.
But as we wait for a ruling in that case, there's word on another front that could be even more damaging to Governor Christie. The Times expanding today on what a Star-Ledger report hinted at earlier this month about Port Authority toll hikes artificially inflated for political gain. Citing a secondhand source to the meeting, the Times reports that Governor Christie instructed a group of Port Authority officials to propose a $6 toll increase at Hudson River crossings. Christie told the group he would publicly rail against it and that the agency would then agree to a lower number. The paper goes on to say a similar move had been considered under then-Governor John Corzine, though it didn't say if that idea came from Corzine or from the Port Authority, but that idea was dismissed as, quote, too contrived. All this as Governor Christie's numbers continue to freefall. A new poll from Fairleigh Dickinson has Christie's approval rating underwater for the first time. 41% approval, 44% disapproving. Now compare that to November, when Christie had just won re-election and was widely considered the Republican frontrunner for president. His approval rating down 36 points in just 4 months. For more, let's bring in tonight's panel. Dominic Carter here, as always, political journalist and author. And joining us tonight, Jessica Proud. Jessica is a Republican strategist, and she is the spokeswoman for the Rob Astorino gubernatorial campaign in New York. Guys, thank you so much. We'll get to the developments in court today in a little bit, but the idea that a governor could influence and even arrange and order the Port Authority to raise tolls $6 so I can step in and make it $4 and come across as a hero, that seems more than just a dirty trick. That seems borderline abuse of power.
I don't know about that, Andrew. Maybe I've been around politics too long, but that's what politicians do. I mean, these two governors, Cuomo and Christie, they appoint, I believe, a majority of the Port Authority board. But politicians do this all the time to make themselves look very good. So I don't know if there's anything criminal with that, but it doesn't appear to be the case. That's the least of the governor's problems.
Jessica?
I think it's just a little bit of insight that is much needed from the public into these authorities, and it really is should be a call for public authority reform. You have all these authorities in New York State alone. There's hundreds of them, and they're quasi-governmental agencies, and they're not subjected to the same accountability and scrutiny, yet they very are much involved in state governments, and the governors have a lot of control over them. So I think this is a perfect example of why we need to have major authority reform.
Now, the one thing we haven't heard from in all of this is Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York, whether he was involved in this, whether he knew about this scheme to raise tolls an exorbitant amount. But, you know, Jessica, you're the campaign spokesperson for the guy running against Andrew Cuomo right now. If it was Andrew Cuomo in that article, if Andrew Cuomo had proposed raising it $6 so that he could lower it to $4 and come across as the hero, your campaign would be calling for his head at this point, wouldn't it?
Well, we don't know the answer to that question yet. He was mentioned in earlier stories about it, but again, I think it speaks to a larger issue of needing to reform these authorities and really look at what role the governor had in any of this. You know, just saying that it's New Jersey's problem doesn't really cut it.
Now, obviously, there's a legal issue for Governor Christie and all of this with all of the different investigations. But, you know, the word impeachment has been thrown around a little bit. And the question is, there's a lower threshold for that. You don't have to violate the law to be impeachable. You really just have to get to a certain point where politically it's untenable for you to stay in office or for your enemies to gang up and knock you out. Do we have any idea what that point might be in New Jersey, or whether Christie is getting close to that point?
Well, remember, initially I thought that this governor was not going to survive. I think he's now definitely going to finish his term, especially now all of this could change based on the judge's ruling of whether or not Mr. Christie's top aides will be forced to reveal the private emails and all the additional information. That is the smoking gun to all of this. So let's assume, for argument's sake, that they are not required to do so. The governor, it appears, will finish his term, but as I predicted from day one, the presidential campaign is over. He can try and run all he wants to. I don't even think he's going to try at this point.
I don't know that that's necessarily true, Dominic. He just came off of a very well-received speech at CPAC last week, where he was very warmly embraced by conservatives who, you know, might have had some problems with him in the past over his embrace of Obama. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And by the way, there's no smoking gun that they've found yet. There's still nothing that directly ties him to this. So as long as he can stay truthful to what he said in that press conference, I think he could survive it.
But aren't the CPAC crowd simply supporting Christie because they hate the media?
No, I think he came in there and laid out a very clear speech about some of the fiscal issues that he's tackled in New Jersey and made a compelling case.
Now, as for the issue that brought the two aides in court today, or one of the aides was there, Bridget Kelly, Bill Stepien's lawyer was there instead. One of the arguments that we heard articulated in court was they're doing essentially government work, maybe work that they shouldn't have been doing, through private emails. It's almost in a manner you would think to try to hide it from the possibility of investigators or from anybody who's auditing those systems. There are rules about things like this. I mean, even just in a campaign, there would be rules about using campaign email versus using a personal email account.
No, not in a political campaign, but there definitely are in government. And having worked in government, you know that now with the Freedom of Information Law request, everything is foilable, everything could be out there in the open. And I think the response to that is people, even if they're not doing anything illegal, but they might be having politically sensitive conversations on private emails. So how this shakes out, I think will have a ripple effect in how governments communicate.
Well, this is not going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to be hearing about this for weeks and months, maybe even years. Up next on RFL, 1 week into his campaign for governor of New York, how is Republican Rahm Astorino doing on the issues and in organizing what might go down as one of the biggest political upsets in state history? We'll ask his campaign spokeswoman, who just happens to be sitting at our table, next.